Hayward Podworks. 100 shows, one vision.
Our sources explain it all. For more information on upcoming shows or to suggest shows, email brianhayward2026@gmail.com. And now let's get into our show. Hayward Podworks is vision, deep dives into any topic.
If you're listening to this, chances are you're someone who's, pretty driven. You've got clear goals. Maybe it's about building wealth or launching a business or finally getting into the best shape of your life. And what's so frustrating, right, is you probably already know what you're supposed to do. You know the diet plan, the business strategy, the right savings account to use.
It's kind of the biggest irony of the whole self-improvement world. We spend all this time looking for the next piece of knowledge, the perfect how-to. But in reality, the knowledge gap is tiny. The execution gap, it's massive.
Okay.
The problem isn't knowing what to do. It's the consistent, relentless struggle to actually do it. And, maybe more importantly, to stick with it.
Right. That sustained effort, the grit, the discipline, that's the stuff that accomplishment is actually made of. So the mission for this deep dive is really to stop, relying on those little bursts of inspiration and instead build something bulletproof, a long-term drive. We're looking at a whole stack of sources on the psychology and the physiology of motivation.
And the core insight, really, is that this is not a battle of logic. If it were, we'd all be rich and ripped and meditating every day. The fight is internal. We have to stop treating motivation like some vague, mystical energy and start treating it like a measurable output, one that we can generate by understanding and then overriding the emotional and physiological signals our body is constantly sending us.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Let's start with the mind. For centuries we've glorified human rationality, but the sources are crystal clear on this. Decisions are driven by emotion first, logic comes second. Why does our brain do that? Why does it keep prioritizing that emotional pull?
Well, our emotions are basically a very ancient, very fast compass. They tell us what our body thinks we need to do right now to survive or just to be comfortable. You see it so clearly in consumer behavior. People don't buy a car because they did a spreadsheet on fuel efficiency. They buy it because they imagine the feeling of it, the elegance, the status, the freedom.
So we're fighting against this primitive evolutionary wiring. It was designed for a world where the biggest priorities were finding warmth, staying safe, finding the next meal, and those drives are always in conflict with modern goals like, I'm going to save 30% of my income.
Exactly. And they win. They win every time because they're tied directly to our physiological needs. The most visceral proof of this is that feeling of being hangry. It's a simple concept, but the mechanism behind it is fascinating. When you haven't eaten, your body basically perceives an emergency.
Which means the system just floods with cortisol.
The stress hormone,
yeah.
Right. And at the same time, your serotonin levels, the feel-good, calm-down chemical, they just plummet. And this hormonal cocktail, it makes you anxious, irritable, you snap at people, and you're completely unable to concentrate on anything that isn't solving that immediate threat.
I think we've all been there. You're at your desk, and suddenly a small email from your boss feels like this huge personal attack. Or you get into a fight with your partner over nothing. You think the problem is the job or the relationship, but you're actually just having a low blood sugar crisis.
Yes. The body demands that you focus entirely on that physiological threat. And this brings us right back to Maslow's hierarchy. It really dictates the flow of motivation. Physiological needs, sleep, food, warmth, they're the foundation, the bedrock. They take absolute priority. And self-actualization, where all those complex goals like fulfillment and self-improvement live, is right at the very top.
So if you're trying to, I don't know, learn a new skill or write a novel, a high-level self-actualization goal, but you're running on 4 hours of sleep and just black coffee, your brain just says, nope, not happening today.
The emotional drive to fix the physiological problem, to eat or to sleep, will always be stronger than the abstract long-term drive to diet or succeed. Unless, and the sources point this out, you introduce immediate survival level stress. We don't really struggle with motivation to go to work if we know being late means getting fired. The emotional stress of, financial insecurity, that successfully drives action in a way that the vague idea of long-term fulfillment rarely can.
That makes perfect sense. The threat of losing the roof over your head is stronger than the discomfort of the morning commute. So, okay, if we want to work on those higher goals, we have to kind of cheat the system. We have to make sure those basic physiological needs are already met, or at least minimized.
It's all about creating a clear foundation, mentally and physically. So start with nutrition. Make it consistent, non-negotiable. Skip the sugary breakfast cereal. Instead, prioritize complex carbs, protein, fruit. That sustained energy release stabilizes your blood sugar. It reduces that background anxiety, that low-level hunger that's always distracting you. It's one less stressor. One more point of focus you've just gained.
Okay, so moving on from the physical. What about those nagging little mental things? The sources call them open loops.
The open loops, the small, unfinished tasks that just kill your focus. That unanswered email, knowing you need to book a dentist appointment, the pile of laundry in the corner, they're all low-level stressors that keep your brain running these little background programs.
So the brain is using up valuable attention on these tiny things it hasn't resolved. How do we fix that?
You bring in the 1-minute rule.
Yeah.
If a task takes less than 60 seconds to do, answer the text, put the dish away, sign the form, just do it immediately. Close the loop. It frees up a huge amount of unconscious processing power.
And this is tied to our environment, right? I know for me, if my workspace is a mess, I just feel unsettled. I always thought it was just a preference for being neat. But there's a primal reason for it.
It connects right back to that survival wiring. Our peripheral vision is incredibly sensitive. It's designed to scan our surroundings for threats, for movement, for things that need fixing. So if your desk is piled high with clutter, your unconscious mind is constantly being pulled away by all the stuff it thinks it needs to categorize or deal with.
So by tidying the environment, you're essentially telling your primitive brain, hey, we're safe, everything is sorted. And that lets the higher level conscious brain focus on the hard stuff.
Precisely. It's an environmental hack for managing your internal energy.
Okay, let's pivot to the struggle everyone knows. Getting out of bed when it's cold and dark. That physiological need for sleep is the ultimate ambition killer because the body just wants that immediate payoff.
Staying under the covers is a massive immediate reward. It's a huge dopamine hit. The long-term payoff of finishing that big project, it's way too abstract for your primitive brain to care about at 6 a.m.
So you have to use a different immediate want to win that battle. And the hack the source offers is, I think, brilliant. Put something you really desire, like your phone, just within reach.
That introduces a different but still very strong emotional drive. An esteem or social need, to check messages, see what's happening, and that immediate emotional pull, even if it's fleeting, can successfully interrupt that overpowering urge to stay asleep. It just creates a tiny window for you to act.
And there's a biological bonus there too, isn't there?
Yes. The blue light from the screen hits your retinas, and it triggers a small release of cortisol. Right. Which is actually a necessary part of the wake-up process. It helps kickstart your system just enough to get you past that initial inertia.
Now, if the carrot doesn't work, there's always the stick. The other hack is to create immediate, real consequences for failure.
Absolutely. The goal is to make the cost of not acting greater than the difficulty of acting. It's why people announce their goals publicly or tell their boss they'll log in at 7 a.m. sharp. The sources talk about promising huge amounts of work to clients up front. When your reputation or your livelihood is on the line right now, procrastination just isn't an option anymore. It's painful, but it's incredibly effective.
Okay, this brings us to visualization. This is where the mind can actively start to generate that drive. The sources get into this fascinating concept, embodied cognition.
This is one of the most powerful neurological insights for motivation. Embodied cognition basically means we don't think in some abstract computer language. We think by relating things to our own physical experiences and our sensations. Your brain doesn't really know the difference between what's real and what you're vividly visualizing.
So if I read a really intense story, my sensory and motor cortices are actually lighting up as if I were doing those things myself. The brain is running a simulation.
And crucially, the hormonal response is similar to reality. If you vividly imagine achieving a huge goal, or, on the flip side, a scary scenario, your body releases the corresponding hormones: adrenaline, cortisol, dopamine.
Which means visualization is a direct line to the reward system. So if you visualize the end goal, winning the trophy, being financially free, looking like an athlete, what's happening in the brain?
You're activating the dopamine system, the reward hormone that controls goal-oriented behavior. This lights up what's called the salience network in the brain, which is basically the brain spotlight. It decides what information is important and what deserves your immediate attention.
So the salience network is like a filter. And by visualizing the reward, we're telling our brain, hey, this goal is critically important. It's salient. Prioritize this over all the distractions.
Precisely. A key part of that network is the anterior cingulate cortex. If that area is damaged, motivation can just be flatline. It doesn't matter what you know or what opportunities you have. So we are physically forcing our brain to prioritize the goal.
That's the carrot. But because we humans are so risk averse, we cling to the status quo because what's familiar feels safe. We also need the stick. We need to leverage productive fear.
Right. We need to focus less on how hard the task is and more on the guaranteed negative fallout of not doing it. So don't focus on how hard it is to write the essay. Focus on that awful feeling of disappointing your mentor or the embarrassment of that awkward conversation about missing your deadline. That generates a positive kind of small stress. It's called eustress. And that tangible emotional push can override your inertia.
And we can use priming to set the stage before we even start.
Priming is just about optimizing your mental state. Before a tough task like a workout or writing a report, watch a short motivational video. Listen to an inspiring speech. Our mirror neurons and our natural empathy kick in. It lets us feel as though we are already in that productive state. It's a quick way to activate the right circuits.
So we've covered mindset and environment. Let's tackle the biggest complaint in the modern world. I just don't have enough time.
And the sources really challenge that idea. The real constraint for high achievers isn't time. You can almost always find 10 or 15 minutes for something. The real problem is a lack of finite energy and depleted willpower.
Which is why when we get home from a long day, we just collapse on the sofa. Our mental batteries are empty.
Willpower is a finite resource. And when it's gone, we drift toward brainless activity and immediate comfort. It's why we make selfish, short-sighted choices, like snacking in the evening. The solution isn't to force more hours of work. It's to work smarter with your existing energy rhythms.
So instead of needing these huge blocks of time, we should use shorter modules, like those 10-minute targeted workouts you hear about.
And just be aware of your body's triggers. Sitting down, especially for dinner, triggers serotonin and melatonin. Those are deep relaxation signals. So if you know you need to be productive after dinner, stay on your feet a bit longer. Force your body to stay in a more active state.
But what if you've done all that and you still hit a wall? You're just genuinely tired. How do you generate energy on demand?
The fastest way is light physical movement, even just stretching or bouncing on the spot. It accelerates your heart rate a little, which sends signals through the vagal nerve and triggers a small, safe adrenaline release. That sudden boost makes you feel stronger and more awake.
And that leads to the one that sounds a bit bizarre but is physiologically proven, pandiculation.
Yes, pandiculation. Stretching like a cat or a dog. It's an involuntary full-body stretch. You elongate your body with a slight contraction at the same time. It releases all the stored tension that we often mistake for deep tiredness. And it actually reinforces the brain-muscle connection. It addresses something called sensory motor amnesia, where the brain kind of forgets how to fully use muscles because they're always tight.
That's a powerful reset. But if that fails, there's always the instant jolt of cold water.
The cold water splash on the face is a quick hack. It stimulates very sensitive nerve endings. And that triggers the mammalian dive reflex. It's a primitive reflex that immediately increases blood flow to the brain and your vital organs. It raises your focus and can even promote a flow state.
So beyond the quick hacks for real long-term drive, the sources point to building genuine mental toughness through discomfort training.
This is the philosophy of, the Navy SEALs, the Spartans. Because we live in such constant comfort, our homes are always the perfect temperature, food is always available, our bodies have become hypersensitive to any fluctuation, the tiniest thing goes wrong, and we feel completely thrown off course.
So the goal of discomfort training, things like intermittent fasting or training on less than perfect sleep or taking cold showers, is to learn to be comfortable in the uncomfortable.
You are intentionally raising your baseline of what you can tolerate. If you regularly handle being a little hungry or a little cold, when real hardship hits, your psychological endurance is just dramatically higher. The discomfort has less power over you, and your grit becomes bulletproof.
It sounds grueling, but it seems necessary for sustained success. Okay, Finally, let's wrap this up with goal setting. We all know bad goals lead to failure. How do we structure them to align with all these emotional needs?
We have to focus on immediate, controllable, and easy-to-assess tasks. A bad goal is vague and distant. I'll lose 3 stone by the end of next year. That just invites procrastination. And any small setback feels like a reason to quit entirely.
So a good goal focuses only on the commitment for today. Something like, I will exercise 3 times this week for the next 4 weeks. Success or failure is based entirely on the here and now.
You still keep the huge end goal, the visualization for that emotional hook for the dopamine, but you concentrate all your actual effort only on the daily grind. The end point is just the natural result of mastering the immediate tasks over and over.
And crucially, we have to accept that motivation and discipline are finite. They're like sand in an hourglass. We can't just work 24/7.
The greatest sign of true discipline is the ability to work hard, work smart, and then completely stop. Relaxation, deep sleep, meaningful time with friends and family. That's the mechanism that flips and resets the hourglass.
Just like muscle doesn't grow during the workout, it grows in recovery. Grit and determination work the same way. The ability to rest isn't a weakness. It's a critical part of sustaining motivation.
So what does this all mean for you? Motivation isn't some fixed mystical trait you're born with. It is an acquirable skill. You learn it by understanding and then intentionally hacking your own emotional and physiological responses.
You gain that mental toughness through habituation, making the hard things easier over time. And you gain the self-awareness to choose how you respond to discomfort and fatigue.
And if you want to reach that highest level of consistent performance, the sources all strongly suggest cultivating a stoic mindset. You do that through deliberate practices like meditation. Learning to detach yourself from the immediate signals of fear, pain, and boredom allows you to execute your plan and thrive, even when everything around you is chaotic.
So what intentional discomfort will you choose to become comfortable with today? That's the foundation for real lasting motivation.
Hayward Podworks. 100 shows, 1 vision.
All right, this is Hayward Podworks, and that's today's episode. If this helped you, do me a favor, hit follow, leave a quick rating, and share it with one person who'd get value. Want the extras, links, and new drops? Check the show notes. Until next time, stay sharp, stay consistent, and keep building. Hayward Podworks. We'll talk soon.